Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and we're going to do another nice little scene here. I'm wetting my paper down. This is 11 by 15. This is the watercolor paper from Michaels, and if you go there, you can get it for 50% off when they have their little sales, which is nice. You'll spend about 50 cents a sheet or so. Now, what I'm doing is I have my water bottle with white in it, and I'm just blending that into the paper. This is titanium white, a strip of it in a bottle, a small spray bottle. And I'm just wetting that again just to get that down. And what I find with putting this white on there is it provides a nice base for paint to adhere to, and you can go a little heavier and it will dissolve into the white when you put the paint on. So what I was thinking here was a sort of a burnt umber, not a burnt umber, a burnt orange sort of a color. I was thinking kind of a tonalist type painting. If you're interested in tonalism, Andrew Broussard, a friend and another fellow artist, he does plenty. You can look him up on YouTube. And he does a lot of these sorts of paintings. These paintings here sort of evoke a mood. In the late 1800s, they had a movement of tonalism. And the idea was to create these darks and lights and create this sort of mood. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to get in some of these colors. Now, some people will do this with a very simple palette. You can use a burnt umber, Van Dyke brown. You can use a very, very limited palette here. I'm going to be using some watercolor and some gouache. Orange is a really good color to use, and you can dirty that up using a blue, using an indigo or something like that. I'll have a photo with all the supplies that I used for this particular painting that I will put in the video. So right now I'm just trying to get... this is going to be the backdrop for this particular painting. And while it's wet, you can get in there, you can play, and you can sculpt. And I do apologize for the little glare. When the paint is wet, it's hard to not have that glare on there, and also have enough light so that you can see what you're doing and have the camera face on. Just one of the little challenges here. So I'm using the Ron Ranson brush for this initial part. I had someone ask me in a video if I was using the Ron Ranson brushes anymore, and yes, I will always continue to use those. I have found some other brushes that will do other things that if I find brushes that are helpful. As you know, my journey here is an evolving one. I don't use just one particular set of things. I do have a recommended set of things you can use when starting out, but for me it's been a journey of discovery to keep on pushing and see what else I can get out of it, and what I can get out of a painting, and what I can do, and experiment as much as I can. And the idea is to try to have things that you find that work repeatedly. If you can have repeated success, I think you'll enjoy what you're doing more, and you'll have more satisfaction from painting to painting. So there's a good thing to be said about having a certain set of things that work, and also doing a fair amount of experimentation. It keeps it interesting. Now, I've used a little bit of purple color here. I'm trying to get a little more dimension in the sky, but don't let that... When you watch my videos, I know a lot of people like to paint along with art videos. I strongly suggest when you watch my videos, because I put everything in there. I don't, really, I edit things sometimes for time, and so you don't have to watch blow drying and things like that. But I strongly suggest you watch through once first. And then if you want to go back and kind of refer to it, you can. But at least one viewing to see what I've done, and maybe I'll change something I won't like something and I'll go back and I'll make a change. So it's important to watch the entire video first. This isn't sort of a get out your paints and follow along, at least not at this point, especially when I'm using gouache and things. Here's your blow dryer doing a quick dry. So you can see I have some light in the middle and some darker cloud areas. And I want some more brightness in the center. When I'm looking at this, I'm thinking I could use a little more glow. Now, sometimes I'll spray that on, but I want to go a little heavier. This is lemon yellow gouache. And I'm just going to try to get some more light in the center here. Now, gouache is an opaque color, so it does a better job of covering. That's why I've incorporated some gouache into my painting, is because there's certain effects I want to get, and if I try to do it with watercolor, I end up having to heap on a whole lot of paint. And I can do more with less with gouache. And you can also highlight. You can go from dark to light in certain circumstances. And so for me, that's why on this journey I've incorporated some gouache colors into my technique. And it is a watercolor medium, so you don't have to worry about, it's not necessarily mixed media, although if somebody was interested in purchasing your painting, I'd probably say, hey, this is gouache and watercolor, just for the sake of full transparency. So I'm blending this in. And really just want a little glow here of yellow. It will dry back to some degree. See, with watercolor, what you find is you get a lot of drying back. The way things dry, it's not like oil painting or acrylic. When you put it on there, that's pretty much how it looks when it dries. But watercolor, it tends to dry back. Colors can shift a little bit and so forth. So with gouache, I don't really get that as much. I get a really good idea. I'd rather go stronger and then dry back and have the white as a little bit of a fallback. That kind of mutes the colors a little bit. So now I have a really blended background. Now from here you can do anything you want. When you're doing a painting and you say, well, I don't really know what I want to do, make a backdrop. This will be sort of like your wallpaper. Make a bit of a backdrop, and this is going to set the tone for what you're going to do. Now next you're going to fill this with whatever you want. It could be a mountain, it could be trees, it could be water even. Although at this point it's hard to do water too much because we filled this in with so much, but you can do it. So I'm coming in with a little more orange over here. I feel like the yellow is now a little too dominating. And I thought, well, I'll put a little bit, something kind of crossing over into the sun area here, the light area. But don't count on that because I'm going to more than likely blend this some more. So this is all about me sitting in front of my easel and having an idea of kind of what I want to paint, and then putting it on there and then saying, well, what I had in my mind isn't really working or translating as well. So let me try this. And so you can see that, and this possibly can shave off a little time because you say, oh, I remember he tried that, and, this went this way or this went that way. So now I'm taking some burnt umber here, and probably a little bit of burnt sienna, burnt umber are good to backdrop against this, but try to do some foliage here. So what I'm trying to do with this foliage is I'm thinking I want something dark that can set itself off against that light so we can achieve that tone, that tonal balance. So I'm thinking, well, I could have a little water here in the middle because I have this light area. So you could make the most of that by surrounding that with darks and then have a bit of a pond there or something reflective. So this one here, I'm using the Ron Ranson brush and the shape of the bristles to come up with some different foliage effects. Just kind of dancing that around, added a little bit of indigo to that. One of my favorite colors. If you were starting out, Ron Ranson had his 7 colors. You can go back to some of my earlier videos. That's what I used. And then I started trying other colors. I still use yellows. I'll stick a lemon yellow, a cad yellow hue, which is a warmer yellow. And then I'll have blues. I like to have 2 or 3 different blues for just some variations in the sky. I'll have ultramarine blue. I'll have a cerulean blue. So you can have 2 or 3 blues that you play around with. And then for foliage, you can make your own yellows, or you can use like a sap green or something like that. But you have to fiddle with those a little bit. You have to introduce a little yellow, or maybe add a little red to tamp it down a little bit and make more realistic green. So you can buy a pre-made green as a starting point, so you're not dipping into the red, into the yellow and blue so much. That's what I started doing. I said, well, I have to go to the yellow, and then I dirty up my yellow, and then I jump back to the blue, and now there's yellow in there, and then my blue turns green. And someone had asked me, well, what about this contamination thing? Well, you can wipe off the top, this and that, but now I put them out fresh so everybody could see, and I put them at the top of my board, and I will take a green that's made and then just add to it, because I found I was going through a lot of blue and yellow. Now I don't go through as much blue and yellow, but now that I found this indigo color, I was using that. I was using Payne's gray, but Payne's gray is just actually too dark. It's a nice color for darkening things, but really, if you really wanted something like that, you're better off to use a neutral tint. But if you don't want to use that either, then I find the next best thing is an indigo. Now, they do vary. Like if you go to Michael's, their indigo is bluer. And if you go to Hobby Lobby, theirs is a little redder. But they're both nice, darker start colors that you can use in place of Payne's gray. And that has replaced Payne's gray on my palette. I very seldom use Payne's gray really anymore. Not like I used to. So here again, I've got a nice line of trees with some different shades. They set themselves nice against the backdrop. Now here, I'm going to do a little something I'm going to regret later, but I was looking at this sky, and at the time I didn't really like it. So I decided to put this white wash over to kind of tone it down a little bit. I was thinking I needed a little more light, but this is one of those times when you probably should just leave something alone and, step back for a second. But it's okay. In the end, the painting turned out okay. But you really need to take a moment and step back before you do anything drastic and decide, should I do this or not? Maybe go make a cup of coffee or something, come back and take a look at it. away, letting something sit, videoing something. But I knew in my mind when I'm doing this painting what I'm going for. I mean, here, I'm going to put this little mat here. This is good to have a little mat ready to go to set there and say, okay, what do I want to do here now, right? And for me, at this point, when I put this mat on, I said, this is just not enough here. There's just not enough contrast here. Okay, so I'll take this away, and I'm going to add to this. And you'll see what I add to that really makes the painting. Although I could have left a little bit of the sky there. It had a little more character to it. But you'll see as it dries. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is kind of border off the side a little bit so you keep the viewer more centered in the painting. I'm going to put a nice big dark contrasting tree over to the right here. Very quickly with the Ron Ranson brush. Just like a very, very dark green, indigo, a little bit of yellow. Okay, so here I'm going to put a little bit more yellow in the center, just to get a little bit more light in the middle. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do a quick dry and edit that out so you don't have to sit through that. Now here's where things get a little bit fun. I'm going to do a little bit of rock scraping here. And because it's dried a little bit, I'm going to reactivate it with my spray bottle. Just take the card, and what's nice is when you have a light color underneath, like a yellow, and you put a brown or a dark color and you scrape it away, that light color is revealed, and it really makes a very, very bold look to the rocks. Again, some rocks over on the side, and immediately you'll see the contrast is there. It transforms the picture. And here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a tree trunk. And so I'm going to scrape this down with the card, and there we have instant tree trunk. It's fun. Painting in itself is fun, but when you have a certain technique that's magical like this, it's just pure magic, and it just is what really draws you in. I'm just giving it a little blast with a little more of my yellow bottle. And if you dab with a tissue here and there, you can get even more little effects, little textured effects. And now I'm going to scrape in a little bit of a shoreline here. And now one of the most important steps you can do is to put a little dark color underneath rocks to anchor them to the ground and to create a little shadow effect. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm pretty happy with that. One thing is I could have left that sky alone. At the time, it didn't really... That's a thing you got to, get used to is, should I stop? Should I take a step back and not make a change? It's one of the things we learn as we go. So here it is with the mat on there, and I'm pretty happy really with the overall way that it turned out. So a tonalistic painting, tonalism. So I'm just going to sign this one, and I've popped a couple birds in on top as well. And let's take a look at it head on. There it is. Thank you for watching, everyone. I really appreciate all of the comments and your support. We'll see you next time.